It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Hey, behind me, I have a new guest on the end of the day with Ray. His name is David D'Agostino, and David is the newest member of Next Era. And my friend Wes McCarter at Next Era has been adding to his portfolio of human capital like nobody I've ever known. He's doing a great job with this. I've had Patty Edwards, his new Director of Human Resources. Now we got David helping him with the sales engine and helping dealers even more. It's just a lot of wonderful things they're doing, probably why they're on my platform. David, how are you doing, man? It's fantastic having on the end of the day with Ray, and I just wanted to introduce you to the dealer community, make sure they know you're over there working with Wes, and how you're going to help Wes help a dealer navigate toward the future. So first of all, tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, your little bit of your background, and how long have you been with Wes now?
So first and foremost, thank you for having me, Ray. I appreciate it. I've watched your videos for a while, so it's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Appreciate it.
I've been with Next Era now. 4 months are under my belt, so I'm starting my 5th month.
Okay.
My background has been pretty much copier-centric in one way or another. I have a period of time where I worked for a large independent dealer for a very long time. And then approximately half of the time it's been with a company called ESP out of North Carolina. Okay. They're the power protection provider that most, I think, in our community know about in one way, shape, or form, probably a customer. And I recently left there to come and join Wes and his crew to help grow their business.
Well, so how did you go from ESP? Because I'm aware of ESP. They do some great things, help lower some cost and some services stuff. But how did you meet Wes? Because I believe it was with the World Stats data that Wes has and a relationship he had with ESP. Can you share that a little bit with us?
Of course. So actually, interestingly, when I first started with ESP, probably the biggest challenge we had to break through the barrier of growth within that universe was we had trouble proving an ROI with power protection. And we became aware of BEI at the time, having their data, and we connected with Wes, and we said, it would be interesting if we could go ahead and take a group of our dealers that we know put an ESP filter on every single installation and compare to those dealers who we know do not buy from ESP and look at the service performance of both segments and see what the true ROI would be. And we found that the ROI was there. There was a hard dollar savings for power protection. And from there, we carved out a relationship that lasted for 15 years with Wes. And I ended up joining Wes. I was in the big, so ESP was acquired by a big company. And I really am not a big company guy per se. I'm more wanting to stay with my roots. Copier business is near and dear to my heart. And so I contacted Wes, and here I am, helping hopefully to be able to grow his company.
Well, Wes, it never hurts to have smart executives on the platform. Obviously you managed a pretty sophisticated team over there at ESP. I know your background, and I got to meet you when I was with Wes. But when I look at the dealers today, David, it's there's a couple things that are a little bit scary to me. Everybody's talking about transition. It seems like there's a new webinar every day of how we're going to sell AI and we're going to do all these wonderful things. And the reality of it is, I keep saying we're not going to do anything past what we're doing if we don't do what we're doing well. And there's never been a better time for a dealership to really say to themselves, I've got to fix this. I've got to fix everything that I know there's a problem that I'm aware of, and I really have to pay attention to it, because the only place the only opportunity we have in print, especially in a declining marketplace, is to control our costs and get in line and deliver that as best we can before we start pivoting. And so how can you, as you started, you've been there for a few months now, and you're starting to talk to the organizations, one of the things I always said to Wes is there any way, we got to get that software up front in the front offices. We got to get it in the CEO's desktop, and we got to get it, in admin, and we got to get it in operations. It can't be just on the service department and parts manager's desk. And are we seeing more of the owners getting the software and paying attention to it more, reaching out more, having better conversations?
I think we are, Ray. I think that owners have a vested interest in looking at the service data more than ever, because, as you said, with the pandemic that's hit us, now more than ever, you have to have a good control of your costs. And service, of course, is where you're making your profitability. So to know what good looks like is paramount to being able to achieve those ends. And the owners are taking an interest, and certainly we're trying to go ahead and canvas those owners to bring it to their attention. And so far, so good. I mean, it's working, and hopefully we're starting to make some inroads.
Well, I was talking to some dealers, and a couple of them, we've all heard this, but they're saying things like, "Oh, we made more money last year than ever." Ray, you're wrong. Everything's great. We're making all this money, and I keep telling them, "No, you're not making any money. You're saving money. You're collecting
Right.
revenue from customers,
Exactly.
and you're not providing toner. You're not providing parts. You don't have techs driving across town."
Oh, yeah.
And and I'm hoping
That's
that.
right.
But this is a great time, and I hope it wasn't squandered by too many people. But it was a great time to really look at the next era data and the World Stats data. And I know that Wes has been extremely busy, and the dealers are getting more involved with that. And hopefully, as the industry starts to pivot more into that IT services space, the BEI platform should really become more valuable. I mean, I think it would be more valuable.
Oh, yeah.
You're from the sales side of
Yeah.
things, so you understand how the marketplace sells our equipment. I mean, that's what you did when you were with the big deal. I think it was
Yeah.
Comdoc at the day, and you're
Right.
so you understand that the mentality to go out there and sell, and then how the service department interacts to service it. It'll be interesting as you look at the cost to service the equipment, and you remember back how you were selling the equipment, how you'll merge those two processes in your mind together. Because the sales team, when you're out there trying to sell the hardware, you don't really care what it costs to service. You got a price that you can sell the service at,
Right.
but you sure as hell don't care what it costs the company. I mean, I say that, kind of chagrin, but in all reality, the people that are selling the hardware aren't, there's no pay plan on the service side of them. Maybe there should be. But are you seeing the same thing that I saw in the data, where we're just taking equipment out of the marketplace when it's running the most efficient it is, through the premature leases I talk about all the time? And how do you see the future selling of print, that we can maybe stop some of that? What do we got to do with these dealerships, Dave? Let's having a conversation, too, guys. I mean, this just kind of came up ad lib, but I mean, when I look at the sales engine out there trying to sell equipment, and they're basing it on some service price that's predetermined, maybe even by the manufacturer, but of course they come up with that price assuming that nothing ever goes wrong, like they don't have to do a bunch of callbacks, or they have the part with them and all that stuff. So do you see us changing the way we actually pay salespeople in the future that sell hardware, and do we hold them more accountable to the profitability of the hardware that's delivered?
So my answer to that question is yes, you're right. I mean, the way things are currently done is going to be problematic increasingly as time goes by. Salespeople are motivated off of their compensation. Their compensation addresses their behavior. And right now the behavior is old school, right? Go out there, get the copier sold, cannibalize the service revenue for that end, drive as much gross profit as you can get, increase your commission, and then rinse and repeat. And that's not going to work down the road. Now, do I have an answer as I'm sitting here today? No. But I do know that answer it will exist, and as we continue to march down that path to find out what the solution is, you're going to need data to be able to drive that end. And Xera is well positioned to be the provider of said data to be able to bring that change to the space.
Well, I will tell you this, Dave. I spent a couple years with an MSP, Milton Bartley of ImageQuest, and we really called them account reps. And the way people buy today, I mean, the old 1990 or, back in our day, schlepping copiers up and down the street. I mean, that might be, I think we could say that there's probably some of the $1 or $2 million dealerships out there that can live in that world for a while longer. I mean, they can find enough people. They only need to find 5 people a month. But, when you're looking at a bigger organization, those $10, $50 million dealerships out there, they really need to get more money out of those accounts, and they are pivoting into the IT services sector. And the software that you run an IT services business on, whether that's a ConnectWise or whatever PSA tool you're using, it gives you the ability to really manage the data and manage the cost. I look at NextEra that has the best data in the world to manage the cost of delivering that service to those customers. And if the reps were actually paid on what the profitability was on those devices over the time they were in there, they would do everything they could to sell the right equipment to the right customer, number one, and they would do everything they could to make sure that customer remained profitable. Whether that meant taking out a piece of equipment and replacing it with something else, because it would increase the profitability of the service, not of the hardware. And to me, that's our biggest problem. And I'm hoping, and as I hear more and more, we're going to pivot into IT, we're going to get into IT. But if we're not going to use the data that's the world's best to manage the frickin' print business that we've been in for 50 years, how in the world are we going to go into IT services and manage it?
You're so right.
Well, I'm just hoping that, with your skill set, we got Patty over there at Next Area, you got Wes, his team, his original team. There's so many things that you guys can do to help these dealers. And I'm sure you're like me. You're ready to get out in person and visit these organizations, so you can really dive in. And
I'm like a caged lion. Yep.
Oh, there you go. So right now, Wes obviously has his customers. They're using the data. Is there anything that you want to tell these dealers? And let's talk to the dealer owners. I mean, the service departments. If they haven't involved their dealer owners and their senior leaders outside of the service department with the data by now, they're probably never going to do it. So,
right.
Those service leaders or those dealer leaders and executives inside those dealerships, is there anything you want to tell them that if they're on the BEI platform that they could go back and just look at and say, this should alarm you, please engage with us? Because I think maybe sometimes that's what they need. It's a slap in the face. What would you suggest they do?
Well, I would ask the question, are you, as a dealer principal, as an owner, as an executive, concerned with how you can manage your cost basis in today's environment? Mm-hmm. And if the answer to that question is yes, well, then you really need to take a close look at your engagement with NextEra. Mm-hmm. Because more often than not, they have the data, and we engage with their service department, but the one thing that is continually coming up is that there remains very substantial opportunities to go ahead and do even better than they have been doing if they engage at a more granular level with us. And so give us a chance to go ahead and have that engagement. And I think they'd be surprised to see how much we could do for them using the data and their data compared against the benchmarks and the averages throughout the world.
Well, Dave, I'll tell you this. When I spent that time with Wes, and here I was, and I was from the sales side of our industry. I mean, I'm not a service.
Right.
I was an operations person. I understood how important costs were, and I was a user of the software. But one of the things that when I looked at it from that owner's vision or from that sales vision, I saw the data in a much different way than that parts department person or that service technician or even service manager sees it. And I think it's so important for the dealers. So dealers, if you're on the platform, you got to spend some time, whether that's with Dave, someone else on the team. But I would love to know, how do we get the dealers for the month of February coming up here? How do we get the dealer owners to spend at least 45 minutes inside the NextEra data? I want to have a contest or something. So get with Wes, and let's come out with a campaign to get all the customers that you have today, for the seniors leader in that organization to spend a minimum of 45 minutes in that data. And if they don't come back with a question to ask you, well, they probably ought to reevaluate what they're doing, because I think there'll be a whole lot of questions they would want to ask you. I mean, do you agree with that?
Agree.
All right.
I totally agree with that. I mean, you're spot on.
Well, you're going to need help me make this contest. By gosh, we're going to do it. David, is there anything else you want to say before we end this?
I would just cap that off. And again, a huge thank you to you, Ray, for giving me this opportunity. I hope I can be back in the future with some success stories when I have more tenure under my belt. But keep in mind, NextEra is more than just service. We do engage in other areas of the business. We're in finance, we're in HR, and we can really add value to businesses in all those categories. So give us a chance. If you've never spoken to us, give us a call. Take our call, because we'll be reaching out, I'm sure. And again, Ray, appreciate the time.
Well, I appreciate you, David, because we know this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.